Welcome to In But Not Of, a podcast dedicated to applying a Christian worldview to the study of history and culture. We're so glad that you could join us today.
The people that are hanging on that scaffolding, you're rendering that scaffold unsafe by climbing on it. Those scaffoldings are not built to take very heavy weights. So if we could have some sort of reason, whatever that might be.
Reason, whatever that might be. I thought that was an appropriate clip to begin today to talk about the concert at Altamont. So last time we kind of set the stage for the concert itself, the organizing, the planning, the thought process, or the lack of thought process, actually, that went behind the concert. So today we're going to look at the concert itself as it unfolds. Today's episode is entitled The Dark End of the Street, which is a song by the Flying Burrito Brothers, who were actually a band that many people forget were a central part of the concert at Altamont, made up of Graham Parsons and Chris Hillman, among others. We'll talk about them in a few minutes. A very talented group of musicians, but one of their songs was The Dark End of the Street. And I think it's appropriate here to talk about that in terms of a title for what happens at Altamont. Now, it's interesting that can we have some reason, whatever that might be? Sometimes your words just kind of give your thought process or your philosophy away, right? You're appealing to something that you also simultaneously doubt actually exists. And it's going to be one of the things, I think, the lasting legacies that the counterculture has kind of left us. But we will talk about that at a future time. Our memory of the concert at Altamont largely is shaped from the documentary Give Me Shelter by the Rolling Stones. And one of the scenes that you see in the very beginning of Give Me Shelter, by the way, I think it's free on Google Prime. If you're interested in what I'm going over, I'm going to be playing some audio clips and things like that. But if you actually want to see it, I would highly recommend that you do that just from an interest standpoint. But the logistics that you see in the beginning, there's a helicopter and it's looking at the venue from the sky. And what you see as the concert is beginning here, you see a one-lane highway with cars parked on both sides. Now, it's very clear that you can't get a two-way flow of traffic as you're watching this. And all you can think about is, what was this like to get out of, what was it like to get out of here? And it's interesting, too, that all the cars are pointed in one direction towards the concert itself. And that's reflective, I think, of the thought process. Let's make this happen. Let's get it there. Worry about everything else after. Well, you're going to see that is the problem here. As the concert begins, okay, one of the things that you see very early on is people are already ingesting a good deal of LSD. And this is not your typical LSD, and we'll talk about that too. But it's laced with some pretty heavy stuff. And so the freak out tent that they have here, just like they have at Woodstock, was very busy early on. There were some hog farm volunteers who did show up. Last time, I said there was nobody. The hog farm was not there to bail everybody out, but the hog farm was nowhere nearly as influential here at Altamont as they were at Woodstock, but there were some there, and they were helping out the best that they could. And one of the things that you see early on is a member of the crowd going up to the Sam Cutler and Michael Lang, who was there by that time, and they're telling them to make an announcement that there's some bad LSD going on out there. Some bad trips. And Lang and Cutler, for his part, basically say they don't want to do that because they don't want to put bummers on the crowd. So I think already they're seeing a difference between here at Altamont and then later what happens, or what had happened at Woodstock. They don't want to put bummers on the crowd, so they don't want to talk about the overdoses. The other thing, too, just go back to the drugs for a second. The LSD that is being passed out here is laced with speed, strychnine in some cases, and it's being mixed with alcohol, which is not something that that is is a real positive here. Okay, you can imagine the amount of stuff that this leads to. For instance, they're selling $1.55 gallons of cheap red wine, Red Mountain wine that you see throughout the concert in the video footage. So people are guzzling this stuff down. They're taking the LSD that's mixed with this stuff. And one of the side effects of the speed with the LSD and this kind of drug cocktail is the desire for people to take their clothes off. And so as you look at the video footage, you'll see footage of people going to the freak out tent and places like that naked. And so as Santana takes the stage, they're the first band out. They only play 6 songs, but this is the first evidence as far as the video goes, actually, of real violence. While they're playing, you see one naked, overweight Hispanic man who's clearly losing his mind on drugs, stumbling through the crowd. And so he gets assaulted by the Hells Angels. He's bumping into people. He's doing things like that. And then a guy named Burt Kangason, who's a peace activist, a fairly well-known one, actually stops the beating. He gets in the middle between the Hells Angels and this individual. And he says, "Can we please stop? We're all brothers." He gives the whole hippie kind of spew to them. And while he's talking to them, and he saved this Hispanic man from what's happening to him, he punches one of the angels. The Hispanic man that was losing his mind on drugs punches one of the angels and then disappears into the crowd. Well, this is not good news for Burt Kangason, because now the angels take their wrath out on him, and he gets 60 stitches for his trouble. His head is split open. They're taking pool cues, and they are assaulting people, as part of this quote unquote security force. And they're doing that. Okay. So much of the violence, though, that you see depicted on the video and you hear about at Altamont is actually brought about by the San Jose Prospects. Now, if you remember from the last episode, we said the San Jose chapter of the Hells Angels, this was their jurisdiction. So prospects were people who were trying to get into the motorcycle gang and typically had to prove themselves. So this is where the worst of the assaults allegedly happen early on, is with some of these prospects. Now, after Santana exits, and by the way, if you watch the video, you will not see Santana on the Gimme Shelter or the video footage of Altamont, at least anywhere that I could find. There may be a bootleg recording somewhere. Because of what happens, they don't want to be a part of that. But the Jefferson Airplane takes the stage. Remember, this concert was supposed to be a San Francisco thing, right? And the Airplane are clearly the one of the prominent counterculture groups here. And as you see them take the stage, the platform, the stage, it almost seems like it's level with the crowd. And that's part of the problem is the crowd just keeps descending upon the stage, and it's virtually impossible to keep them back. If you've ever gone to a general admission show, for instance, you know what can happen. And so this is what's happening as they take the stage. And it's that at this point that one of the lasting memories of Altamont occurs. And so I'll play a clip of what takes place during the Airplane's set here, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, it's all right. It's kind of weird up here.
Hey, man, I'd like to mention that the Hells Angels just smashed Marty Ballin in the face and knocked him out for a bit. I'd like to thank you for that.
There's other ways.
Wait, is this on? You're talking to me, I'm going to talk to you.
I'm not talking to you, man. I'm talking to the people that hit my lead singer
You're
in the head.
You're talking to my people.
Right.
Now, let me tell you what's happening.
You, man,
what's
not
happening? Hey! Oh!
No!
Uncle, hold it. Hold it.
No! No, stop it!
You know what's happening? With Carter like you. Hey!
That's really stupid.
Hey, man, you guys do not have to stay on the stage, man. They're not going to hassle us, really. They're not really that. It's
no
really not worth
hassles
it.
with anybody in particular. You got to keep your bodies off each other unless you intend love. People get weird, and you need people like the angels to keep people in line, but the angels also, you don't bust people in the head.
Or you hire a real security force, right? That's another option. That was not really explored here very much. Of course, through the last minute, change of venue, and you hear Grace Slick, the most prominent member of the airplane, basically saying Marty Ballin has been knocked unconscious, right? And you hear other members of the band trying to hold the Hells Angels accountable, and absolute chaos as they're playing here. And so he was literally knocked unconscious by the Angels, and he had jumped down to stop them from beating somebody else who was getting out of control. Well, after the airplane kind of finish their set, the Flying Burrito Brothers come on stage. Now, if you watch Give Me Shelter, the order of the bands is out of order, which they do for cinematic reasons. Again, not depicting actual reality, but the way they want reality kind of remembered. And, the Flying Burrito Brothers basically calm things down, okay? That was made, the Flying Burrito Brothers, Graham Parsons, Chris Hillman, prominent members of the group The Byrds at various different times. They then join together here with the Flying Burrito Brothers. And as they, kind of go through their set, it seems that things kind of calm down, okay? Graham Parsons, by the way, he may be a subject of a future podcast that I do. Very sad, talented individual. I mean, really talented. And was around all of these big bands, was friends with Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. And, just kind of a sad life and a sad outcome for him. But he just a great country singer, could sing gospel, could sing rock and roll, obviously. But anyways, after the Flying Burrito Brothers kind of calmed things down, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young put on a brief set that was only about 5 songs long. And violence happens again. So as the day is going on here, you see the crowd being disruptive, unruly. By the way, most of this is happening near the stage area, which is another thing to think about. You may have had a different interpretation of Altamont if you weren't near the front of that stage. As a matter of fact, they have testimony of people who say, oh, what a great show. The Stones were never better, because they were not in the heart of what was happening, which was right around the stage here. Okay. So after CSNNY is done, at some point, Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead show up. And again, everybody's being flown in by helicopter. Hard to get the musicians in there, just like at Woodstock. And Garcia is told about what's happening. The Hells Angels are hitting people and things like that. Well, he decides to leave. They don't want any part of this. And so they leave. And remember, it was the management of the Dead, management of the Stones. And again, who these, the Stones especially, when I say management, loosely connected people, or people who were, very much connected to the Stones, but were somehow not officially, held responsible oftentimes. So they leave. And now the problem that this creates is there's a gap now. And so the Stones were supposed to come on when things got dark, when dusk kind of came about. And so now people are getting more stoned, more drunk, more disruptive, and we're nearing the peak of the bedlam here. And what's interesting, too, as the Stones arrive and they're walking towards the trailer that they're going to hang out in, Mick Jagger is actually assaulted by somebody who runs up, obviously, again, out of his mind on something and says, I hate you, and punches him. Now, it's not Mick's first rodeo. Last time we talked about the Stones kind of being this almost like a punk edge to them, quite a bit different than the Beatles. They were used to some violence, breaking out at their shows. And so it's at this point now, the Stones are rushed along and they start their set. As they get to the stage, darkness starts to descend. And this is where the really bad moment of Altamont happens. An individual named Meredith Hunter, an African-American man dressed in a green suit with a white girlfriend, A lot of analysis has been done in terms of if that matters here with what happens to him. But essentially, as the Stones begin their set, Meredith Hunter decided to bring a .22 caliber long neck pistol to the show. He actually almost left it in his car and went back and got it. Now, he was not a real violent guy, had a tough upbringing, was in juvenile facilities for burglary, some kind of low end crime. From all accounts, he was a likable person, but made the bad decision to bring a gun to the show. And he's up there yanking on speakers like the rest of the crowd and things like that. Well, violence breaks out, and Meredith Hunter is stabbed to death by one of the members of the Hells Angels. And what ends up happening is the filmmakers of Give Me Shelter actually capture it on video. And Hunter made the terrible decision to take his pistol out at some point. A Hells Angel member saw this happen, and you can see it right on the video, pulls a knife out somewhere up from his body and stabs him repeatedly, and Meredith Hunter dies. And this, of course, is going to be really the lasting legacy of Altamont. So one of the things that you can hear, actually, Sonny Barger talks about this incident. And the next day after the show, obviously, everybody's trying to process how Meredith Hunter could have been killed. And so this is Sonny Barger's interpretation of events here.
Got one of the Hells Angels on the line, Sonny Barger. If I got that right, Sonny?
Yeah.
Okay, what's up?
I didn't go there to police nothing, man. I ain't no cop. I ain't never gonna ever pretend to be a cop. And this Mick Jagger, put it all on the Angels, man. He used us for dupes, man. And as far as I'm concerned, we were the biggest suckers for that idiot that I can ever see. And you know what? They told me if I could sit on the edge of the stage so nobody would climb over me, I could drink beer until the show was over. And that's what I went there to do. But you know what? When they started messing over our bikes, they started it. I don't know if you think we pay $50 for them things or steal them or pay a lot for them or what. Ain't nobody going to kick my motorcycle. And they might think because they're in a crowd of 300,000 people that they can do it and get away with it. But when you're standing there looking at something that's your life and everything you got is invested in that thing and you love that thing better than you love anything in the world and you see a guy kick it, you know who he is. You're going to get him. And you know what? They got. I am not no peace creep by any sense of the word. And you can call them people flower children and this and that. Some of them people was loaded on some drugs that it's just too bad we wasn't loaded on because they come running off of the hill yelling, and jump on somebody. And it wasn't even always jumping on angels. But when they jumped on an angel, they got hurt.
Okay, they're no peace creep. And just by their names, I think that was pretty obvious. And so that's, again, Sonny Barger, the leader of the Hells Angels, I believe from Oakland, who was a central part of actually San Francisco, where he was a central part of the organization and things like that. Now, the Meredith Hunter was not the only death here at Altamont. Another individual named Leonard Krizak was essentially a hippie from Buffalo, decided to get into an aqueduct where that was nearby, concrete walls and things like that. And the witnesses say that they saw him flipping the police off as he slid down a bank into the icy water that was below. And he died a short time later as the current took him away, and they pulled his body out of the water. So there was another death there. Drunk people and people, that are on all sorts of influence, water does not mix with that, especially water with difficult currents. I was actually not directly connected with an incident that happened, but a friend of mine passed away that way, way back in college. So not a good idea. And you see early on that happened there. There's also another two individuals who die after the concert due to an individual stealing a '64 Plymouth. They were essentially stuck in traffic on the way out, decided to get out of the car, light a campfire, lay down, and a car came barreling through that was stolen and essentially hit them and ran them over. Two of them died. One of them nearly died, was dead on arrival at the hospital, but they saved him. The police had, detained at the scene the individual who stole the car. While they were dealing with the chaos, that individual snuck away, got through the crowd, and was never heard from again. So that's another incident at Altamont. Now, after the death of Meredith Hunter, basically the Stones finished their set. They get on a helicopter and get out of Dodge. And, Dick Carter was the owner of the racetrack. As, the public became aware of what happened at Altamont, he's going to be named in about 40 lawsuits. Now, they allow him to continue to operate, but he's not allowed to have crowds that are larger than 3,000 people. But the Rolling Stones and the Grateful Dead essentially get off here scot-free. Their reputation's tarnished. They don't ever really work again, by the way. I always got the sense there was some bad blood there between the two. But this is the end of that combination. And because so many people were loosely agreeing to things, there's a lot of chaos after the concert. Bills are unpaid. The Stones just wreaked havoc in our country on the West Coast with rental cars and all sorts of things, hotel rooms that weren't paid for. So again, a real legacy here that's left with Altamont. So what do we make of all this? Well, I think if we look in the pages of Scripture, the first thing, by the way, before I do that, I do want to tell you that I'm going to wrap this up, Woodstock and Altamont, in 1 or 2 podcast episodes where we really look at the big picture here of the counterculture, what we see here in the Tale of Two Cities. But as far as what I talked about today, when you look at Proverbs 11:2, it says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with humility comes wisdom. Now, there was no listening to reason, as you heard in the beginning, whatever that may be. It'll work out. We'll get it done. There's no security, but it will all just work out. This is clearly not wise. And what you have happen with the organizers is they end up surrounding themselves with people who agree with them. They're making huge decisions, but there really isn't any dissenting voices in the room. Very similar and reflective of something that LBJ did as president. As he went further and further into the abyss of Vietnam, he was surrounded by people who just were yes men, who agreed with what he did. If there were somebody, and there were people occasionally that said, this is not a good idea, they were removed from the inner circle. And so this is pride here. And it doesn't correlate with wisdom, as Scripture warns us about. Proverbs 11:5-6 say, the righteousness of the blameless makes their paths straight, but the wicked are brought down by their own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the unfaithful are trapped by evil desires. Overindulgence, drunkenness, and violence all came together on this day in 1969. People, unfortunately, are trapped and enslaved by the desire for their next experience. Let's keep upping the ante. Let's mix strychnine, speed, hallucinogens, anything we can with LSD and see what happens. Well, how do you get this stuff? How do you get the next high, the next bigger experience? Well, you have to see the angels, or you have to have organized crime involved. The drug trade always goes back there. Of course, today you see the solution, let's just legalize it. Of course, you don't take away the effects of this stuff, though, do you? They may have pulled off 3 days of love, peace, and happiness at Woodstock. But what about Altamont? And I don't even think that's true. But what about Altamont? Well, let's hear just the lasting legacy of the Rolling Stones as they took stage and the chaos that ensues there.
People, who's fighting what for? Who's fighting and what for? Why are we fighting? Why are we fighting? We don't want to fight. Come on. Who wants to fight? Who is it? Hey, every other scene has been cool. Look, that guy there, if he doesn't stop it, man. Listen, either those cats call it, man, or we don't play. Come on. Hey, if you don't call it, you ain't gonna hear no music. Now you want to all go home or what? We need doctors down here now, please. Can we have a doctor down here now to the front? I cannot see what's going on. I just know that every time we get to a number, something happens. I don't know what's going on, who's doing what. It's just a scuffle. All I can ask you, San Francisco, is like the whole thing. Like, this could be the most beautiful evening we've had for this winter, you know, and we've really, you know, why don't let's get up, man. Come on, let's get it together. I can't do any more than just ask you, to beg you, just to keep it together. You can do it. It's within your power. Everyone, Hell's Angels, everybody. Let's just keep ourselves together. You know, if we are all one, let's go, we're all one.
So you hear Mick Jagger trying everything that he can to pull off the love, peace, and music that you had at Woodstock. Clearly, this is not happening here. You know, you can't blame the police here now, can you? Like they did with other festivals. When violence broke out at other festivals, it was said it was the police's fault. Well, whose fault is this? You know, during the planning stages, Mick Jagger said he even want the police to escort them out of there when they were done. He was so anti-police. Well, this is what you get. You know, we're all one. Let's act like we're one. Well, yeah, that's easier said than done, isn't it? You know, Proverbs 17:12 says, let a man meet a she-bear robbed of her cubs rather than a fool in his folly. Now, at Altamont, 4 people died, 3 of them violently, and all of them due to the influence of drugs. You had hundreds of bad trips. Who knows how many of those you had? Wanted or unwanted, with your LSD assassinations, as we talked about last time. Nearly every aspect of Altamont was folly. There really is little good that really takes place that can be gleaned from this concert. You know, the festivals continued in some cases making the same mistakes. Now, Gimme Shelter is a good documentary, but as many said, it's like watching a train wreck or an assassination. It's interesting, but would you call it good? You know, even the meanness of the LSD things that are happening with people dosing other people and things like this. This is very much a part of the counterculture too. Why don't they embrace that and take responsibility for this? Whose fault is this? You know, in the final analysis, in many ways, the incidents at Altamont can be understood by Proverbs 23:29-35, which says, who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to the sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will see strange sights, and your mind will imagine confusing things. You will be like one sleeping on the high seas, lying on top of the rigging. They hit me, you will say, but I'm not hurt. They beat me, but I don't feel it. When will I wake up so I can find another drink? Of course, the intoxication here is centered on wine, which was a very obvious element here at Altamont, but you can also extend that to the LSD and the drugs that were everywhere. And you see the warnings in Scripture about diving headfirst into a lifestyle that's really built upon a foundation of intoxication. Well, there's a whole lot more to say, but that is all we have time for today. But remember, friends, all truth is God's truth. And if Jesus is who he says he is, then that changes everything. We hope you enjoyed being with us today. Join us each week for In But Not Of, a podcast dedicated to applying a Christian worldview to the study of history and culture.